today to show that we truly honor all of you who come from far away to our community here. And we want you to know that you always are part of the Landmark community, and you live your legacy here with us, no matter where you depart from after you graduate. This also goes to all of you who come from other states that are here so far away from home. So this day is for the whole of the Landmark community, and all the cultures, even the American-born, are representing today.
So I guess this is working. I'm Miss Rain, and I appreciate Miss Saralides inviting me back since I'm not working here anymore. And I also have one of the wonderful dresses from Abdullah.
Oh, yes.
So, and I am Miss Day, and is this working? Okay, so I'm Miss Day, and I went to Israel last summer, and I got this dress. It is a Palestinian dress. Palestinian people live in Israel, and so I'm wearing this today to meet to honor the family I met while I was there.
Hey everybody, I'm Miss Nikitas, and technically I'm Greek, but I'm not wearing blue and white today because from a very young age, when you go to Greece, they don't ask you necessarily what's your name or how are you, but they ask you what team you are. So what soccer team do you represent? And that's what I decided to represent today, my soccer team, which is Panathinaikos. So we're doing pretty well this year too.
I'm Miss Tansy. I recently went to Mozambique, so I'm wearing something called a capilana. So they wear this every day over their clothes. And it's just to kind of, like, if they're traveling to work and it's kind of gross out and it's raining, they wear this to, like, protect their clothes underneath.
And so these are the advisors of the group. Miss Teague, did I say that at the beginning? I don't think I said that at the beginning. Miss Teague and Miss Rain may not be active in the group, but they're always working with us behind the scenes, advising us, and they're always honorary members of our international group. So thank you very much. And also Miss Murphy is part of the team. She's our tech person this year. So let the show begin.
Thanks for coming.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be opening the first part of our segment today, and I'm going to be opening this to you guys, and I would like to see what you guys think about or understand or believe in about privilege. And any of your answers, you can shout them out, will be written down on that whiteboard over there. So if you guys want to just pitch them to me, and I'll give them to her over there. Sit down. I remember. All right. Entitled. Advantage. Good one. Opportunity. Very good. Social construct. Great.
You can keep going.
Myth. All right.
What was that?
Myth.
How so? Who said it? Excellent. Well, what do you mean exactly?
Because it's not. I don't believe it's really.
Oh, so privilege may be a myth, so you don't believe it exists. Very good.
Not all at once.
Status.
Status. Awesome.
That we may not be aware we have it.
We may not be aware we have it. Nice.
What determines it?
What determines it? It's a good question.
Can you guys think of something that?
Anything?
Freedom.
Freedom. That's a good one.
Income.
Income. Another nice one.
Race.
Race. Great. Education. Awesome. Gender, another good one.
Sexual orientation.
Sexual orientation, mouthful.
Your location.
Location, location.
Age.
Age, very good. Any more? All right, good. Well, thank you guys. We're gonna keep this up, and towards the end of the show, we'll revisit them, I think. And yeah, good job, guys. Thank you.
Good job.
So now that you guys know a little more about privilege, we're going to do an activity called the $1 race, and Pedro's going to explain what it is.
So the $1 race is going to work like this. We're going to get 5 members from our group and 5 audience members, and I'm going to say a couple questions, and if this question is true to you, you take a step forward. If it's not true to you, you stay in the spot you're in. Okay, so could we get some, so now the team members that are participating, you guys could step up. And could we get 5 audience members? Yeah, Darcy, Stassi, Eliza. 5.
One more, guys.
Okay, we need one more. Okay, Christina. Okay, so first question. Step forward if you have never been ashamed of your learning disability.
So you've never
been ashamed of your learning ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
of your ability.
Good. Second question. Step forward if your parents are still together. Step forward if you have never been bullied. Step forward if you feel safe walking in your hometown after dark.
Oh no.
Step forward if you have never had to worry about money for high school food. Step forward if you will not have to take out student loans for college. Step forward if you have never had negative assumptions made
About you.
about you.
Because of your race or background. So, is this a straight line here in this room?
No.
Are they all at the same spot? Hey, Ryan, looking at this, what do you think about privilege now? So these were
It's like people with different lives.
but some were a little more privileged than others, right? Some of us are privileged to have both our parents still with us. Some of us don't have that privilege. Some of us have the privilege of being certain that when we go to college, our parents will not have to strain to get our education, to make our education accessible to us. But some of us know that our parents will have to really struggle to do that. Some of our parents struggle to do that even for this part of our education. Am I right? Yeah. Raise your hand. So this is a small sample of the Lama community here, right? This is not a straight line either. For different reasons, people have different privileges, and we're not really aware that we have it, right? I don't very often think, oh, I'm so privileged that I have a house to go to every night. There are people who, not in our community maybe, but you know how many people are homeless, for instance? That's lack of privilege. How many people, and maybe Mr. Dixon, are you here?
I'm here.
Have you ever experienced any kind of lack of privilege or a privilege taken away from you that you would care to share with us?
Absolutely. I'll use something, a minor detail, I guess. So,
When
when
you
I
come?
was going for, okay. So, my first name, if you guys don't know, is Jamal. So, when I was going through the interviewing process, everybody told me to put Rob down. So I go by Jamal, but my first actual name is Rob. So it's a small detail, but I took Jamal off of my resume to say Rob Dixon because it's more comfortable with people. It's a small thing, but I have many others that I'll get into probably. But not right now, right? Can we talk about others now?
You can name one more.
Oh, okay. So
Because
Ryan,
some
I don't want to single out Ryan.
No, it's all right.
Yeah. So for me, I think privilege is hard to recognize because if you're in a room with everybody's the same, right? You all have the same advantages. So until you go to a neighborhood that doesn't have those advantages, Ron, have you ever been to like Baltimore, DC, inner city communities? Would you say they have the same privileges as if you go to a suburban neighborhood in DC? Or?
I'd say that they all have the same starting point. Like they all can eventually do what anybody else can.
Mm-hmm.
If they just if they just follow through high school, get married before they have kids, and go to college.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad you said that because a lot of people think that. A lot of people are told you can be whatever you want to be. It's not entirely accurate, right? We know, say you're in a bad city, okay? You grow up with maybe just one single parent. Maybe you don't have both parents at home. Maybe you go to a school that's not really safe. It's not known for sending kids to colleges, okay? Maybe you're walking to school through a neighborhood that's crime infested. These things happen in the inner city that kids aren't familiar with in these neighborhoods. Like you don't have to deal with crime on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Like I've been pulled over, I don't know, I can't even count anymore. One time I was pulled over, I was on the passenger side, right? Mistaken identity. Has that happened to anybody in here? Anybody driving here, first off? All right, so I was pulled over on the passenger side. I'm looking over at my friend to see if the cops come to that side. They knock on my window, tell me to get out of the car. So I have to go, I didn't have my ID with me, it was in the trunk. So I have to go to the trunk to get my ID. You guys know it's iffy nowadays, right? So I'm going to the trunk to get my ID, my heart's pounding. Those are things that I went through on a regular basis that I don't think a lot of you guys recognize because you don't have to. Like your life goes on, so it's not something you have to worry about, right? So I don't want to just keep going because I can go like 2 hours. Yeah.
Anyone else who would like to? Ryan, first of all, thank you so much for knowing that, standing by your belief and voicing it earlier on because this was part of a great discussion. Thank you.
Nice job, Ryan.
Very much. Anybody else? Please feel free. What do you think? What do you see? Have you ever thought about these things?
Yes. I believe that some of us are more fortunate than others. We have more privilege than others. I've been to a lot of different around the world, and I've seen like many sad things. I think it's a complete like different scale. Like me personally, I think I'm privileged just like to have a house and like family, like loving and food, and some people don't even have that. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
So my older brother is gay and married, and just recently I realized that I have a lot more privilege than he does, because when he wants to go on a vacation with his husband, he has to look into whether the community or area is accepting of the LGBTQ community, and I just took for granted that I don't have to take that into consideration.
Our first cousin's the same thing. Two ladies, and they always have to go through all those hoops when they want to go on a vacation.
That's terrible.
Yeah, so they don't have some vacation. Anyone else before we move on? One more question? Sorry. One more thought. People on the floor? Oh, yeah.
I think you don't really see it until you talk to someone or experience like what happens firsthand with people who don't receive the same kind of privilege.
Absolutely right. And I'll share something that I don't think I've said before. In my old neighborhood, we just moved last year. In my old neighborhood, I was there for 12 years. And I had invited people over plenty of times. And they had respectfully declined. The only family that got close to us, and to this day we're still like family, was a family from Hong Kong across from us. We were not specifically, we didn't feel so welcome by the rest of our neighbors in our first neighborhood. So, and it took me this year, this thing, to realize that and recognize it about our lives. So, okay, on to the next thing.
All right, so you guys can sit down. Thank you very much.
This on? Okay. So now that we finished with that, we sent out a test called Got Privilege to everyone. About 63 people answered, and this is a more broader spectrum on a graph that we have here.
So before you saw a little sample of our community on the floor, here is a little figures sample of 63 of us. And the survey was answered by adults and students combined.
So let me just explain the graph a little bit. So when you see red, it means that this is indicating people who have privilege because they answered, yes, I do not have this particular challenge. I haven't faced this particular challenge. And the blue is more of a lack of privilege or a challenge that people have. So if someone's been bullied, it's difficult. It's something you have to deal with, and so it makes your life a little bit harder. Does that make sense? All right, great. How do bullies?
Wounds. Okay, so you get the picture. And Pedro, would you like to elaborate for one sec, since many people won't be here next period, what does it mean for you to be able to walk safely around?
So I'm from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So I'm from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I don't know if you guys know this, but we have a really big crime rate. And you know, I was never able to walk alone at night. I didn't really start walking without an adult in the street until I was like 14. Yeah, it's just like, it's a you just live in constant fear that if you go out in the street, you're gonna get mugged or shot or something's gonna happen. And it's just like a lack of freedom that we have.
So what happened when we went to the cheese place and we were walking to the restaurant?
Oh yeah, so we went to a cheese place in Salem, and I told Ms. Z that back home I could never like take my phone out of my pocket when I walk in the street, because I get mugged or shot or something.
He was so happy. At some point we were walking and he said, "Oh, I got a message," and he pulls his phone up, and he
It was my
freezes.
mom.
And he goes,
That was my mom.
and he reads, and then he freezes and says, "Oh my God, I just don't believe I can do that here." And we're all saying, "What do you mean?" I can pull out my phone from my pocket without feeling that somebody will race and grab it from me, because this is my reality at home. So, yeah, think about it a little bit. We're privileged here, yes? Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Yep.
And then this is just all of them next to each other.
Okay.
Hello. All right, so I'm going to be explaining to you guys about Money Street. Money Street was done by this lovely lady, I believe her college students or something. And what they do is they take all the poor side of other countries and poor side of like countries like ours, first world countries, and they compare them and show how if you think you were like in the middle or at the end, you might be like above a lot of lower end countries like Africa or something like that. And also it shows that what you might believe about these countries with their houses and stuff like that might look like could be a little different. Other than that, are we watching the video?
Yes.
Yeah? All right, so we'll watch this, you'll get a better feel for what I just explained.
With Fidelity Wealth Management, you get straightforward advice, tailored recommendations, tax-efficient investing strategies, and a dedicated advisor to help you grow and protect your wealth. Fidelity Wealth Management.
What images do we see from the rest of the world? We see natural disasters, war, terror, we see refugees, and we see horrible diseases, right? We see beautiful beaches, cute animals, beautiful nature, cultural rights and stuff. And then we're supposed to make the connection in our head and create a worldview out of this. And how is that possible? I mean, the world seems so strange, and I don't think it is. I don't think the world is that strange, actually. I got an idea. So imagine the world as a street, where the poorest live on one end and the richest on the other, and everyone in the world lives on this street. You live there, I live there, and the neighbors we have are the ones with the same income. People that live in the same block as me, they are from other countries, other cultures, other religions. The street might look something like this. And I was curious. In Sweden, where I live, I've been meeting quite a lot of students. And I wanted to know, where would they think they belong on a street like this? So we changed these houses into people. So this is the 7 billion people that lives in the world. And just by living in Sweden, most likely you belong there, to the richest group, right? But the students, when you ask them, they think they are in the middle. And how can you understand the world when you see all these scary images from the world and you think you live in the middle while you're actually at top? Not very easy. So I sent out photographers to 264 homes in 50 countries so far, still counting. And in each home, the photographers take the same set of photos. They take this bed, the stove, the toys, and about 135 other things. So we have 40,000 images or something at the moment, and it looks something like this. So here we see, it says on the top, families in the world by income, and we have the street represented just beneath it, you can see. And then we see some of the families we have visited. And we have the poor to the left, the richer to the right, and everybody else in between, as the concept says. We can go down and see the different families we have been to so far. Here, for instance, we have a family in Zimbabwe, one in India, one in Russia, and one in Mexico, for instance. So we can go around and look at the families this way. But of course, we can choose if we want to see some certain countries and compare them, or regions, or if we want to see other things. So let's go to the front doors and see what they look like. Go here, and this is the world by front doors, ordered by income. And we can see the big difference from India, Philippines, China, Ukraine in these examples, for instance. What if we go into the home? We can look at beds. This is what beds can look like. Doesn't look like the glossy magazines, doesn't look like the scary images in media. So remember that the students in Sweden, they thought they were in the middle of the world income. So let's go there. We zoom in here by filtering the street to the middle, like this. And then I ask the students, so is this what your bedroom looks like? And they would actually not feel very at home. So we go down, see, do they feel more at home here? And they would say, no, this is not what a Swedish typical bedroom looks like. We go up here, and suddenly they feel sort of at home. And we can see here in this image, we see bedrooms in China, Netherlands, South Korea, France, and the United States, for instance. So we can click here. If we want to know more about the family, the home in which this bed stands, we can just click it and go to the family, and we can see all the images from that family. So we can go this way too. And of course, this is free for anyone to use. So just go here, and please add more images, of course. My personal favorite that everyone always tries to make me not show, I'm going to show you now, and that's toilets, because you're not really allowed to look at people's toilets, but now we can just do it, right? So here we have a lot of toilets, look pretty much as we're used to, right? And they are in China, Netherlands, United States, Nepal, and so forth, Ukraine, France. And they look pretty similar, right? But remember, we are in the top. So what about checking all the toilets? Now it looks a bit different, don't it? So this way we can visually browse through categories of imagery using photos as data. But not everything works as a photo. Sometimes it's easier to understand what people do. So we also do video snippets of everyday activities, such as washing hands, doing laundry, brushing teeth, and so on. And I'm going to show you a short snippet of toothbrushing, and we're going to start at the top. So we see people brushing their teeth. Pretty interesting to see the same type of plastic toothbrush is being used in all these places in the same way, right? Some are more serious than others, but still the toothbrush is there. And then coming down to this poorer end, then we will see people start using sticks. And they also might use their finger to brush their teeth. So this particular woman in Malawi, when she brushes her teeth, she scrapes some mud off from her wall, and she mixes it with water, and then she's brushing. So therefore, in the Dollar Street material, we have tagged this image not only as her wall, which it is, but also as her toothpaste, because that is also what she uses it for. So we can say, in the poorer end of the street, you will use a stick or your finger. You come to the middle, you will start using a toothbrush, and then you come up to the top, and you will start using one each. Pretty nice, not sharing toothbrush with your grandma. And you can also look at some countries. Here we have the income distribution within the US, most people in the middle. We have a family we visited in the richer end, the Howards. We can see their home here. And we also visited a family in the poorer end, down here. And then what we can do now is that we can do instant comparisons of things in their homes. So let's look in their cutlery drawer. So observe the Hadleys. They have all their cutlery in a green plastic box, and they have a few different types, and some of them are plastic. While the Howards, they have this wooden drawer with small wooden compartments in it, and a section for each type of cutlery. We can add more families, and we can see kitchen sinks, or maybe living rooms. Of course, we can do the same in other countries. So we go to China, we pick 3 families, we look at their houses, we can look at their sofas, we can look at their stoves. And when you see these stoves, I think it's obvious that it's a stupid thing that we usually, when we think about other countries, we think they have a certain way of doing things. But look at these stoves, very different, right? Because it depends on what income level you have, how you're going to cook your food. But the cool thing is when we start comparing across countries. So here we have China and US, and see the big overlap between these two. So we picked the 2 homes we have already seen in these countries, the Wus and the Howards, standing in their bedroom, pretty hard to tell which one is China and which one is US, right? Both have brown leather sofas, and they have similar plate structures. Most likely both are made in China, so I mean, that's not very strange, but that is similar. We can of course go down to the other end of the street, adding Nigeria. So let's compare 2 homes in China and Nigeria. Looking at the family photos, they do not look like they have a lot in common, do they? But start seeing their ceiling. They have a plastic shield and grass. They have the same kind of sofa. They store their grain in similar ways. They're going to have fish for dinner, and they're boiling their water in identical ways. So if we would visit any of these homes, there's a huge risk that we would say that we know anything about the specific way you do things in China or Nigeria, while looking at this, it's quite obvious. This is how you do things on this income level. That is what you can see when you go through the imagery in Dollar Street. So going back to the figures, the 7 billion people of the world. Now we're going to do a quick recap. We're going to look at comparisons of things in the poorest group. Beds, roofs, cooking, and observe in all these comparisons, the homes are chosen so they are in completely different places of the world, but what we see is pretty identical. So the poorest billion cooking would look somewhat the same in these 2 places. You might not have shoes. Eating, if you don't have a spoon. Storing salt would be similar, whether you're in Asia or in Africa. And going to the toilet would be pretty much the same experience, whether you're in Nigeria or Nepal. In the middle, we have a huge group of 5 billion. But here we can see you will have electric light, most likely. You will no longer sleep on the floor. You will store your salt in a container. You will have more than 1 spoon. You will have more than 1 pen. The ceiling is no longer leaking that much. You will have shoes. You might have a phone, toys, and produce waste. Coming to our group up here, similar shoes, Jordan, US. We have sofas, fruits, hairbrushes, bookshelves, toilet paper. In Tanzania, Palestine, hard to distinguish if we would sit in US, Palestine, or Tanzania from this one. Vietnam, Kenya, wardrobes, lamps, black dogs, floors, soap, laundry, clocks, computers, phones, and so on, right? So we have a lot of similarities all over the world. And the images we see in media, they show us that the world is a very, very strange place. But when we look at the Dollar Street images, they do not look like that. So using Dollar Street, we can use photos as data, and country stereotypes, they simply fall apart. So the person staring back at us from the other side of the world actually looks quite a lot like you. And that implies both a call to action and a reason for hope. Thank you.
Yeah, this video, I like this video a lot. If you guys want to look at this, you guys can look it up online, I think.
We'll send links.
We'll send links to all of you guys through emails and stuff like that. But now, let's debrief. Let's talk about what you guys thought of the video, what stood out. Is there anyone that wants to call out and kind of say anything about it? No? Ask questions. Do you guys have any questions you'd like to ask? Any ideas you want to take away from this video? Any thoughts?
Did you expect it?
Any surprises? Right?
How long has this website been around?
I think it's pretty new. As you can see, they had to collect like, a lot of data. They had to take all those photos. I think she'd be a better dentist than this presenter, but.
I just found it interesting that the same income with different countries, almost like every living situation is the same.
Yeah, definitely. That was a very cool point that she was able to show us. So.
Is it really about privilege or is it about power? Is privilege the result of power? Because what she's talking about, money, implies some kind of power.
Well, definitely. I think.
People don't seem to talk about that.
I definitely think that definitely plays a role, especially with certain kinds of countries or continents. But yeah, that's definitely a good point to bring up. Good takeaway.
I thought it was really interesting because sometimes we go to other countries for service trips and we're interacting with people of a certain income level, and then you kind of assume that that whole country functions on that income level. So this really shows you that every group at each income level is pretty similar across the country, so you can stop generalizing.
Yeah, definitely, because when you go on those trips, you only get to see like one part of whatever. So that's what it would have. Okay, good job.
What's your view on privilege?
What's my view on privilege? Most people don't like my view on privilege, but I think that in some aspects there definitely is a result of different stats that people have, and that can play a big role in how that affects getting a job and things like that. So.
In preparing for this presentation, a general question to the whole group, is there anything that surprised you as you were trying to prepare materials for this?
So actually, when I first, well, unless someone else wants to answer, when I first saw this video, I was like, well, America has the richest poor people. Because they didn't, I don't know, I wasn't able to really see the video, but they had like a giant, like a wave, yeah, wave graph, and like you had the U.S. and then you had like China, and it had the poor end was over here, right? And it was all on the same kind of like upper class, and then you had other states or like continents that were over here that were much poorer, but the rich were in the middle where our poorest people were. So it was, very interesting to see how you would think that it almost seemed like people were very humble on the poorer side in the richer countries, where they thought they were like on the world scale, they were, more on the lower, but they weren't. So it was, for me, that's what struck me the most, was seeing that difference. I don't know how much time we have, but does anyone else want to say anything? Oh, a couple more minutes?
Could I just point something out? Sorry, guys. Just bear in mind, and I don't know how, it's, yeah. So I was expecting to also see some of the higher end houses in India, for example, where she showed us some countries, and she's still working at it. So this study is not complete, but I would be interested to see the difference between some of the countries that we deem as emerging economies. What does the upper end look like there? Because from my personal knowledge, it looks pretty much like we are here, right? And the opposite. As Cam said, she didn't show any of the very poor households in the States or in China, right? So just take everything with a grain of salt. But we thought that this was a very visual representation of what's happening in the world.
I was thinking that I think with privilege
Very good point. Yeah.
I had a question on the graph when they compared China to the U.S. What was so substantial about China's graph being so much higher than the U.S. graph?
Yeah, they have like tons of people over there.
Okay, so I have one more question. So following up with what Mr. Nixon said, which thank you very much. Mr. Nixon was saying that if you are privileged compared to someone else, that you shouldn't feel bad about that. You should be grateful, right? What about somebody who has less privilege than someone else? Should they feel bad about that? What do you guys think? What's that? So what do you think?
You shouldn't feel it's not like the way you're born is actually something you can. It's not like the way you're born actually. It's not like you get to choose. So no one should feel bad for being privileged or not privileged. It's not your choice. It's just how it ends up.
Yep. Absolutely. That's right. So, and I think that I think it's good to keep in mind if you have more privilege than someone else that it's not necessarily something to be proud of, but something to be grateful for. So I really appreciate that.
And one way in which, like, I personally have worked with my own privilege is that I'm using that privilege to then help someone who may not have been given as much as I may have been. So the fact that I'm a white woman who was raised by parents who were able to support me really well means that I have the opportunity to then speak and help provide privilege to people who haven't been given that at birth. And that gives like an opportunity where instead of feeling guilty or bothered that you've been given privilege, that I've been given privilege, use that as opportunity to then be like, okay, I can open up doors for people who may not have the same privilege as me and give them the opportunity to then succeed in what they may not have been given at birth.
Right, hand it down. Pass it down. Very good.
And that's, I guess, the takeaway from all this, that, as Peter said, we do not choose how privileged or not we are, but we can certainly use our resources to help those who are not privileged, just like a team of Landmark teachers did over March break. They went to which countries? Who knows? Mozambique, to help teachers and students there who are not as privileged as we are. And we'll be talking about that next period. So thank you all for coming. Excellent.
That I didn't have because I was a woman. So I'm old enough that when I was first looking for a job, sometimes I was told I was not getting that job because I was a woman. So how many of you who are young women can even imagine that? Being told you can't have this job because you're a woman. So a couple of years ago, I became aware, all of a sudden, when I was speaking to people about privilege, I became aware of the privilege that I have because I'm white. How many of you who are white know that you have a privilege that people of color don't have? Yeah, it's real. It's real. So maybe I remember last year or the year before, I started to talk to the international group about privilege and looking at that as something that perhaps people in the international group might be more aware of than some others because of different backgrounds, different color skin. So I want to tell you about something that happened to me recently that was very, very telling. I was at Mass General for some major surgery, and they have wonderful staff there. And one of my nurses was a woman of color. And we started talking, and she told me that she'd had a patient, a white woman, who didn't want her to touch her because of the color of her skin. And this is something that happened recently. And so how would you deal with that if someone didn't want you to perform your job because of the color of your skin? So she said what she did was she just continued to love that woman and to accept her. And finally, the other woman changed and was able to accept her work. So we have no idea how much we could be hurting someone else because of our privilege. And I guess what I'd like to ask of everybody is that you become aware of the privilege you have and use it to help someone else. So the discussion is going to continue about the different kinds of privilege we have. It could be because of color, because of money, because of status, because of our position, and lots more things. So I thank you for this opportunity to talk to you.
All right, so I'm here to introduce Mozambique, because this is where I live, this is where my family lives, and a few teachers at the school got the privilege to go visit there and work in a school, and it's a really great country. It has beautiful beaches, really kind people. It's Portuguese, that's the language that they speak there, and it's pretty impoverished and has a lot of disease, and it's a developing country. It's on the rise, but it had some disadvantages because it was oppressed by the Portuguese, and they had a revolution about 90 years ago. So, okay. Yeah.
I'm Miss Pansy. So all of us, Miss Bartz, Miss Bergstein, are wearing capelanas. So this is what they wear every day. So these were gifted to us at one of the schools we went to. So over March break, we went to Mozambique. We traveled to 3 very different schools, which we'll talk about. But we went to Christian Academy of Mozambique, continued to say out, and Anamogus. We taught over 500 kids in the classrooms. And then we gave presentations to some of the teachers in each of the schools we went to. And we also got to go on a safari, which we'll talk to you guys about. So a little bit about Mozambique. The flag is in the top corner, and it's also hanging over here. It's in Africa, so it's a country in Africa, right next to South Africa as well. The capital is Maputo, which is where we were, and the main language was Portuguese.
Okay, so the first school that we went to was the Christian Academy of Mozambique, and this school is pretty similar to Landmark in that the classes are about 5 to 12 students. A lot of the students who go there are children of international business people or ambassadors' children, and they spend a lot of their time outdoors. You'll notice in a lot of the pictures, the classrooms are very open to the environment, and everyone is kind of moves in and outside. There's no real like buildings where no one goes outside. We taught a variety of ages and subjects while we were in this school. So that's Miss Tansy and I teaching in a second grade classroom, first grade classroom? Kindergarten. And we taught all of the grades and all the ages, and we taught them a lot of study skills. So you guys will use flappers and foldables in math and science and English. So we kind of gave them the opportunity to use the subjects that they're learning and apply some of those strategies to them. So using paper and folding and having really interactive lessons is not something that is commonly done. So we sort of introduced that to their classrooms, and the teachers really liked it, and it was nice to have that connection with them.
All right, one of the other schools that we went to was called Cantina de Seo. This school did not have quite as much privilege as the first school that we went to. So they did have fairly nice classrooms with groups of students who were approximately 30 to 40 students in each class. And this school was the school that Ms. Bartz was talking about. They taught all in English, which was a lot easier for us to work with the teachers and students. But at Cantina de Seo, they taught in Portuguese. So we had to work with translators and much larger classes and teach some different study skills with these groups. So we did, mostly when we were working with the students, we worked with kind of a review activity. Reviewing and circling back to old information is an idea that's not really used in most of the schools in Mozambique that we were visiting, at least. They kind of just keep moving through the material, which, as hopefully you all figured out, isn't really the best way to learn. You have to review a lot. So we did a review activity that Ms. Tansy is going to try out with some of you in a minute.
And here we've got the other Portuguese school that we went to, Anamogas, this week. This school had probably the fewest resources and was the largest school of the three we went to. Between like 650, maybe 1,000 students there versus 110 at Christian Academy. And for some perspective, the tuition there is like $25 US a month. As a private school, that's still like pretty good compared to the public schools. And in talking to the teachers there, they really wanted to know, you're all coming from a school with a lot of resources and you teach like 8 students. We have 60 students in a class. What can you possibly tell us that's going to help? And with so few resources, all of those study skills activities that we did, you just couldn't do that. I mean, the ability to print out this page of notes before coming in to talk today is a luxury that they don't have. So we had to kind of revisit that and really focus on teaching the translators to teach the classroom teachers this warm-up activity where it was really just one prompt with the beach ball and working with the material that they already knew and about like how you taught rather than the the accessories that you might get to use for that. We've got a couple videos here so you can hear what it's like in these classrooms. This first one, one like that, an English class.
English. Who is the father of your father? The father of your father.
A lot of them would do the claps after people got correct answers, which is really nice. Some schools were very specific about it. Clap, clap, and move on. You got in trouble if you didn't do it right. This next video is a physics class. I think it was 11th or 12th grade, and they're in a temporary classroom. On the next slide. Next slide.
Sorry, I thought it moved.
There we go. So temporary classroom, physics class, and you could hear it was kind of noisy in that other room. This one has metal walls, and there's just a thin piece of sheet metal separating the 2 classrooms. So we'll just give you a couple seconds of this. So it's probably good. It never really got quieter than that. And you can imagine trying to learn in that kind of environment. They do a pretty good job, all things considered.
So because they were all Portuguese schools and we had to go into a physics class, an English class, and a variety of different classes, we try to think of one activity that we could give them that kind of works for every class. So we're going to do it with you, but I'm sure some of you guys have used a beach ball in your classes. So we have 6 numbers on this ball, and the numbers are on the board. So number 1 is, what is your vocabulary word you've learned in class? Number 2, what is a concept that is still very difficult for you to learn? 3, what works really well? 4, a main idea. 5, a fun fact about yourself. And then 6, they got an opportunity to ask us questions. A lot of them asked us about McDonald's and KFC, but we still answered their questions. So we're going to try this just so you guys can kind of see what we did in class. So we're going to use it with your content that you can do in any class, so it works for any class. So I'm going to throw someone the ball. Got to catch it, AJ. So what number did your left thumb land on? Or right, whatever number. 2. So number 2. What is a concept that's still very difficult for you?
Speaking in front of people.
Max. 6. Ask us a question.
Why did you want to go to these schools?
Why do we want to go to these schools? For me, I really like traveling, and I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of see a different country. And I like learning about other education systems, so going through with that.
So why we went to these, so my answer to why I went on this trip in general is very similar to Ms. Tansey, but also why these schools were chosen for us to go to while we were organizing the trip was, if you all know Mrs. Coleman's, her parents live in Mozambique, and her mother helped us choose these schools and get them set up. And one of the reasons we went to them in particular is these were actually 3 private schools, and she was hoping to maybe get us in some public schools there because they have even more need than the private schools. However, there's a lot of corruption in the private or public schools there, so she's still working with them to try to get kind of approval to have help come in. So we are, this year and last year's group, have gone to these private schools to try to sort of prove to Mozambique, the public schools, that these programs work and that this help is really useful for the teachers, so that hopefully we can get into schools with even more need in the future.
Samantha. Oh, maybe not. What number do you have for your thumb? 5. So what's a fun fact about yourself? About yourself?
I don't know. Rose.
Rose. We'll do one more just so you guys get a sense. See how far you can throw it. Julia.
That was for you.
What number?
5.
5. What's a fun fact about yourself? Other than soccer.
What? I don't know.
An unknown fact for later, right? So this is what we did in all the classrooms we went to, just so you guys got a sense. So we tried to make it interactive. We tried to make it hands-on for them, so it wasn't just doing the same lesson and that repetitiveness that they saw every day.
So general lifestyle things that we saw in Mozambique, we got the opportunity to visit a couple different orphanages that the Larson family is affiliated with. Their friends run them. And so that's what we see here, their preschool class that we visited. But in general, like living there, especially for students, there's really not much to do outside of school. There's just not much going on. So you gotta make your own fun, and like us coming to visit was the biggest thing to happen that day. They were so excited to see us, just for showing up and spending like maybe 10 minutes there. Yeah, I wasn't even looking at the slide for a second. So that, like, it's also a country with huge contrasts. So this is the market down the street from where Mrs. Coleman's parents live. We got vegetables and some bread there a couple days. Right down the street from that, on the next slide, is the brand new fancy shopping mall with like a totally Western grocery store in it that wasn't very highly populated. There's maybe 150 people in the whole place. Most of them work there because the people who live there just can't afford it. But both of these things exist, and it's all within a few miles of each other. These last two were a public school with the students under the tree. So that, like, if there's not enough space in the classrooms, your class is outside. If it rains, you don't go to school. And they don't rotate through that. That's your class all year. So it's not like they share that around. What questions do people have? We'll take 3.
What was the most challenging thing for you going into the classroom and trying to like teach the concepts or the material that you got?
Yeah, so I think the most challenging thing pretty unanimously was the language barrier. So in those 2 schools, Continua de Seo and Anamogas, they both spoke Portuguese, the teachers and the students. So trying to convey different classroom techniques like cueing when the student doesn't have the answer, how do we help them get the answer? That stuff is really, really geared towards being able to understand each other, so speak the same language. And it's really hard to work with a translator because some of that language is really, really technical, and it's hard to kind of get a lot of those concepts across when you're not speaking the language that they're speaking, which is Portuguese, which none of us speak.
How do you like the kids?
The kids were wonderful. They were just like so much fun to work with. I mean, the students were all like you, like, just really great people. It was a lot of fun to work with them, and the kids at the orphanage especially were like, I mean, have you ever been swarmed by a bunch of really happy preschoolers who all want to just hug you? It was a pretty good experience.
So there's a concept that my older sibling Emerson has regarding people who go into schools like this and people who are willing to go and visit new places. Like during March break, I went to South Africa, and we had the opportunity to go visit an orphanage and see people there. And I got sick, so I couldn't go. But my older sibling Emerson had this idea and concept of it's not really something that's fair because we're using a privilege, in their opinion, to visit these kids. And I don't think that's a fair privilege. And I think that saying that, oh, you have a privilege to visit these kids and it's a privilege that you're wasting because you're just putting your Western ideas into them, it's stupid, in my opinion. But I also think that it's really amazing that all of you went there. And I think that if you guys have anything that you want to share about any of your experiences there, I think everyone here would love to hear about them.
Okay, so it's interesting that you brought that up because there's a lot of ideas and theories about how we help developing countries, and sometimes you face a lot of adversity from those developing countries because they feel like you're kind of pushing what you know on them, or that you are saying that you know more than them. So I think that the Coleman family understands this really well. This is Mrs. Coleman's parents. So what they're trying to do is sort of train the educators to and work with them as opposed to just giving them knowledge. So instead of going into schools and telling teachers, this is how you should do it, we really made it a conversation, and we wanted to get ideas from them as well because they're teachers too, and they're students too, and they have excellent ideas. So I think making it a conversation can be a better approach.
Just specifically about the orphanage experience too, like going there, it felt like to go and visit didn't feel like doing enough because like you're there for a few moments and then you're gone, and it's hard to make any lasting impact. So one of the things that we did, their drum had broken, and so that's a traditional important part of the culture. So we paid to have a new drum made for them. So that's something that they can do. That's their culture, not really us, and we're really low key about it. But they'll be able to enjoy that for years. So that was something I feel pretty good about.
So for the sake of time, we're going to wrap it up and let International Club take over. But if you guys have any other questions, you can feel free to find any of us, and we're willing to answer your questions after this.
big thanks to the Mozambique teachers and all that. That was great. Take it away, Meryl.
Good day, everyone. So I'm going to be representing Australia. That's where I'm from. I'm dual citizen. So I lived in Sydney, Australia. When I was younger, I went to school there. So the first pictures are of the harbour, Sydney Opera House, Sydney Harbour Bridge, Centre Point Tower in the distance, and then down below are the Three Sisters. And so this is in the Blue Mountains, and it's a 1,000-step walk trail down into the valley and around, and you get great pictures of the Three Sisters.
Hey guys, I'm Pedro. I was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So that picture over there is Ipanema Beach in Rio, and the other one is Casa da Lapa. Yeah. Alright. So these are like some foods. So those over there are brigadeiros. They're like little chocolate things, and over there is acai, which is like crushed fruit mixed with honey and water.
Hey, I'm Oliver. I'm German and American, but today I'll be representing Germany. So over there we have like Germany, then over here we have the whole of Europe, and Germany is the shaded part, and there's the German flag. Alright, and then in the corner right here we have German chocolate. It's Kinder, it's pretty good. Then in the other corner we have Schnitzel, it's a German meat. Right here we have the German soccer team.
Hi guys. So I'm Cole, and I'm primarily West African and European and Chinese. But today I'll be representing Ghana, not the traditional wear. This is Nepalese. Anywho, so Ghana is a small country in Africa, and more specifically Western Africa. And 2 years ago, I spent about a month there volunteering, sort of just to get more in touch with my ancestral roots and to learn about the culture and all of that. So up here we have the Ghanaian flag. As you can see, Ghana is a small country in Western Africa. Over there in the bottom left corner, you can see some of the landscape. So they have primarily like dirt roads. Right above it, there's a traditional food called fufu. So that would be like pounded cassava, which is a type of root, with curry. And then over there is one of the castles in Cape Coast, which I actually visited. And within that, they actually held dungeons where they held slaves. And so Ghana has a whole very intense history with slavery primarily, but a lot has changed from that.
Hello everyone, I'm Cameron Evans. I'm representing Italy. As you can see, this is Italy on a map of Europe. Italy's full of just beautiful places such as the Tower of Pisa, Rome, the Colosseum. Yeah, and it's awesome. Now, where can you go wrong with this? You have pizza, wine, spaghetti, and cannolis. Beautiful. There's always one thing in Italy that is beautiful, and it's the music there. Even though I haven't been there. So, just trust me on this. I heard it from a friend. You know. In Napoli.
I'm Italian and Irish, and I'm representing Ireland. In these pictures, we have Irish soda bread, which is a traditional bread made on St. Patrick's Day in Ireland. And this is Trinity College, and it was started in Ireland. And these are the Cliffs of Moher, which are beautiful cliffs in Ireland, and that's a national park. Thank you.
I'm Ethan, representing Mexico.
wanted to clarify something here. On this side, you kind of got the stereotypical Mexico, a drug-infested border city. A lot of people, I bet, have thought Mexico is like that. It's not. It's a beautiful place, and people don't dress up like mariachi players and wearing normal clothes. One of the big things of me representing Mexico is just clarifying some of these stereotypes that Americans have.
Alright, I'm down on that. Yeah, my last name is in my first name. Yeah, so this is a map. Up there is the map of Africa. Down there, sorry. And Namibia is right there. It's actually the third least densely populated place in the world. We have a population of 2.3 million people. Right there's my horse. That's a photo of kind of my backyard on my farm, just to prove that we have some green in Africa. And that's the Namibian flag over. These are some of the beaches that I've been to. I took the photo on the left by accident. It just turned out really nice. And when I went home over March break, I didn't take that photo, but I went sandboarding along that coast. And it's kind of hard to sandboard and take a photo. Fall into the ocean. Yeah, that's my sister. We go quad biking, or ATVing as you call it here, over the sand dunes. And then that's a view from one of our coastal apartments in the coast. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter Nicolai Jonsson from Sechny. I will be representing Norway, and I also made a slide for Iceland, because why not? Over there we have the Norwegian flag, which can also be seen over there to the right. This is where Norway is on a map of Europe, right above Denmark and Germany, and to the left of Sweden. That's a map of Norway. These here are both pictures from Oslo, and this is a picture from the fjords. Here are some pictures from Iceland. If you ever see anything that looks at all modern from Iceland, it's from the capital Reykjavik. And we're known for our northern lights, as seen in the top right picture, our glaciers and ice, as seen in the middle picture. And in the top picture right there, you can see Harpa, which is our opera house. It does light up like that during the night. They have lights in every window, which is really cool. The Icelandic flag, which is quite similar to the Norwegian one. And there's Iceland, to the right of Greenland and to the left of Norway on a map.
So Sweden. So me and Calais represent Sweden in the international group. Great place. So that's basically the outline of Sweden. Below that we have Swedish meatballs, which is like a really good food that's very common across Sweden. The major metropolitan city that you see down in the right-hand corner is the capital, Stockholm. And then above that is what most of Sweden actually looks like, so the villages and small towns.
So, I've lived in many places, but I chose Spain. So, the football stadium is the Barcelona Stadium, and down below it is the outlook from a high motorway. Above over there is an outlook of Spain as well, and on the left is like a village. The map is of Spain, and I lived in Madrid, and the big church is very famous.
Hiya, I'm Sam, if you don't know me. I'm representing the United Kingdom, England.
I'm Sophia, and I'm also representing the United Kingdom. So on the left is the London Eye. on the right is the national soccer team.
And there's Big Ben, you know, and yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Cameron. I'll be representing the U.S. and I know we're a little short on time, but I'll try and explain why I did international group and am representing the U.S. And that's because I wanted to be exposed to newer cultures, and that I felt that even though we are doing this presentation in the U.S., it'd be great if someone on the international group would also represent them. So that's why I'm here. My ancestors are, I have some Native American in me, I have Spanish, or not Spanish, sorry, English, French Canadian, and Polish. So that's me. And then I know I look a little goofy, but something iconic is a half cowboy, and then denim was made in the US, so that's who I am.
Okay, so we're gonna now open up, I should say, allow you guys to ask us some questions. If you guys were wondering anything, ask our panel.
I have a question for Pedro. What's life like in Brazil?
So life in Brazil. Life in Brazil. Life in Brazil is like, I would say in some aspects it's very similar to life in the United States, at least for me. But that's because I came from like a wealthier part of Brazil. But for a lot of people, they don't have as much freedom or as mobility as you guys. So like here in the United States, at least in a couple parts, or at least around Massachusetts, you guys have the security of knowing that you can go back to your house and there won't be a huge, like people won't start shooting at you, or if you go get hurt, you're gonna go to the hospital and you'll be fine. In Brazil, for a lot of people, that's not a reality. They live in constant fear of not being able to afford health care and not being able to walk the streets.
Norway is actually pretty similar to here. The cultures. The culture's a little different. People aren't as friendly on the streets there. Like, it's not dangerous, but like you don't talk to your neighbors really at all, or like you don't sit next to people on the bus or on the train because it just kind of glare at each other.
Do you mind sharing that detail about your school?
Oh, sure. So when I first came to America, there was like a big culture shock. Like my first day in school, we always took our shoes off before going inside. So I left mine outside, and I came into the classroom, and I didn't understand why everyone was wearing shoes. Like 5 minutes later, the teacher came in with my shoes above her head, and she was like, "Oh, whose shoes are these?" So that was my first day in middle school.
Is there a reason? What was the reason for taking shoes off? Is it the sanitary or reason, or religious reason aspect? Culture?
I think it was just like sanitary, honestly.
Yeah?
Yeah, we had little cubbies.
There's no point in my name. I just think my dad was like saying rubbish, and then the nurse just kind of wrote it down, and then it ended up being my name.
So usually I don't go by my full name, obviously. I go by Peter Nikolai, or English pronunciation, Peter Nikolai. But here I go by Peter. Some people call me Pete. And that just has to do with, in the United States, I don't want people to butcher my name as much because I tried a couple times my first year here to get people to pronounce it, but they can't. Yeah, so I give up. There's no point in trying. And the only time when somebody would really use your full name in Norway would be like very, very formal. And interesting thing is, you don't really call teachers by their last names in Norway. You're more close to your teacher, should I say, because you usually have the same teacher for multiple years, which is interesting.
So, question I have for the group is, can you guys raise your hand if you have to fly over to an hour here in the country?
What was the question?
It's actually oh, the low
It differs. Like, sometimes the pilot's stupid and goes the wrong way around the world. I don't know why. Or if I fly from Boston to Germany and then home, it's about 26 hours with layover. If I decide to fly Boston to New York, to South Africa, to Namibia, that's like 32 hours. But you know, seats are nice sometimes. So how do I spell my name? Oh, there's actually an interesting fact about that. In my full name, there's like the first 3 names you hear, those are all silent N's, like in front of them. Like there's just no point of them being there. But
Say it again. Say it slower, I can't understand.
No, I am saying it slow. Awan Nenwa, you Anton, Tahilute, Tilula.
Lula.
That's why we don't try the full name.
Backwards. So, any other questions for the crowd?
I have Cam. Yeah.
Okay.
How's the pizza?
In Napoli, where love is king, when boy meets girl, here's what they say. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When you see the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore. Bells will ring, ting-a-ling-a-ling, ting-a-ling-a-ling, sing Vita Bella, lucky fella. Birds will play, tippy-tippy-tay, tippy-tippy-tay, like a gay tarantella.
Lucky fella.
Well, a big thanks to the panel for sharing their experiences and about their culture. Give them a round of applause. And now I'll pass it off to Missy, who I think might have a surprise for us, or at least for me.
At this point, we usually bid farewell to our outgoing seniors. And this year we will be wishing good luck with their next step to college to 3 of our members. Our president, Maxwell Yoder, he's been with us for 2 years, a very, very active member of the group. Then we will have Cole Bascom Young and Cam Fairweather. Please approach. We'll give you a little flag gift to take to your next dorm in college to remember that how much you mean to us and to this community, and please come back and visit and share more experiences with us as you grow. Thank you guys. Please approach.
We'll miss them, right?
So that ends our presentation for today. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know. She asked me. Hold it. What's your favorite donut? Lane. What's up?
Okay, stop there.